So if you're like me and maybe you like computers and you like tinkering with things, and in my case also I'm into photography, that's my job, but you got a lot of files, all of this stuff starts adding up. So you get a NAS. I got my first NAS last year and it completely changed a lot of stuff, but it was kind of a intro to mid-level NAS and I'm not doing much with it. It's a 4-bay. I basically just have it as a Plex server and I'm using it also as a backup for some personal storage stuff. Nothing crazy, but also the NAS itself isn't anything crazy, and that's kind of the typical use for what I think a lot of people assume a NAS is for. But recently I got a new NAS because I decided I wanted to be able to have something for work, something that would be good for video editing, photo editing, that I could link direct to my computer and also have access to and all that stuff. So I got this new Ugreen NAS and it's pretty beefy. It's a 6-bay. I got it all set up for work, been able to edit off of it with 2.5 gig speeds, super nice. But now I'm over here like looking at these specs of this thing and realizing this thing is like way more than a NAS. This is like a full-on workstation. This thing has an Intel Core Ultra 7. It came with 64 gigs of RAM. It's got dual slot drives, Oculink, all kinds of stuff. And I'm just sitting here realizing like this is a legit massive computer also. Basically, I just kind of want to know like what else can I do with this other than just use it like a regular NAS. So I'm looking around in the NAS and I'm looking around at what came with their operating system and the apps and all that kind of stuff, getting it all set up. I noticed that they have a hypervisor built in for a virtual machine. So that's pretty cool. That definitely makes it easier than what I'm used to for making a virtual machine. So let's just give this a go. Go ahead and make a virtual machine and I throw Linux on it. And I'm noticing like the way that they have this set up, how easy it was to make a virtual machine. This is great for me and maybe someone like you if you're interested in trying out like a new operating system. If you're like me and you're getting kind of frustrated with Windows and you don't want to consider a Mac, then doing a virtual machine, in my opinion, is a great way to try out Linux. It's certainly not the only way, and it's also not maybe the easiest way, but it's definitely a solid option. I did run into a few problems though, and I kind of wanted to just touch on a few of those just so if you're getting started into this, then you'll have a little heads up about like some of the things that could go wrong. The first thing I noticed is that the shift key doesn't work. That's definitely a problem because, most people need a shift key. This is kind of a common thing or a known issue though, and this basically has to do with like in my case how I have it set up. I've got a browser-based console, so I'm effectively going through a lot of stages and taking this keyboard mapping with me through each stage, and sometimes that can get messed up. Sometimes your keyboard map can just like not translate so well. And the first thing to go with keyboards and this kind of mapping issues is almost always character modifier keys, and those are like the shift, the caps lock. Those are the ones that like tend to get lost or messed up in the mapping first. So in my case, the first thing I figured I'd try is the browser. I was using a browser called LibreWolf, which is a fork of Firefox, and LibreWolf is like more privacy design, so it's like I had a lot of restrictions on it. It's really tightened down. There's a lot of security things that it doesn't let through. So I decided the first thing to do was just try it in a Chrome-based browser and log in that way. And that was the first step to fixing that issue because it was immediately fixed. So another thing I wanted to try was just not using a browser, just like doing a remote desktop login. So I gave that a go and tried logging in, and basically what happened was it would say everything is cool, it would log in, and then it basically like looped and kicked me right back into the login page. So now I'm stuck in this loop where I can't log in through the RDP. Come to find out, this is actually a known issue with the version of Linux that I'm using, which is Mint. And then within that version, I'm going with the Cinnamon package. Basically, the Cinnamon doesn't like the XRDP that you have to install to do the remote login. So then what I decided to do to see if I get around that was to install the XFCE. And once I did that, that actually made everything like just worked. The remote login worked, and it also made everything run a lot smoother because XFCE is a lot lighter than Cinnamon for like what it needs for resource usage and stuff like that. So those were just a few of the issues that I encountered, and it's very specific to what you're putting on the VM. Like if you would have done Windows instead of Linux, then you would have had a totally different workflow and potentially a set of different issues than I'm having with this. And if you would have done a different distro in Linux, like if I would have used Zorin or something, I don't know. I'm going to try that next though. I did grab Zorin 18 and I kind of want to see what the hype's about that. So maybe I'll do some more videos later about that. But the point was, I just wanted to give you a heads up on some of the kind of things that you might expect if you're doing a virtual machine, and then if you're using that virtual machine through a browser versus doing like a remote login. But it's all up and running now, and it's really great that I've got all my stuff like, LibreOffice and the browser that I wanted. I've got both LibreWolf and a Brave browser on there. So I just want to go over a couple of reasons for if you were thinking about doing this and what are the pros and cons. Like I already said, this is great for if you want to try Linux like full on long term without having to do live boots, without having to do dual boots. This is a great option for just seeing what all you can do in Linux. If you need that isolation and that privacy and that separation, all of that is really great with this type of a virtual machine. A virtual machine in general is good for all that, but it's even better on your NAS if your NAS can handle it, because then it's always on. It doesn't require your main PC to be on or off. But where it might not make sense is if you're doing like really heavy workloads, if you're doing anything that requires like GPU usage, if you have a lower tier NAS device that just doesn't have great components, like maybe it doesn't have a very good CPU or it doesn't have enough RAM, those kind of things. Or if you just need like a really quick local VM that's just on your machine already because you're already on it. In those instances, doing a virtual machine on your NAS might not be the best option. The whole goal with this for me though was it wasn't about replacing my PC. It was just about utilizing this, what I'm realizing is a second PC, and just trying to get the most out of my workflow and kind of see what I can do. So I'm going to do some more videos about some other stuff that you can do with the NAS in general. I already mentioned Plex server, but maybe I'll go into some deeper dives with Plex versus Jellyfin and like how to get that set up, specifically on the Ugreen NAS, because the unfortunate bit is the Ugreen NAS doesn't have a Plex app to install like it does for Jellyfin, but that's for another video. Another cool thing that I just recently did with this one was that my son plays Minecraft, and I've been paying for a server for him through Microsoft, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to support Microsoft. I don't want to pay for their servers. So I was able to make him one on this new NAS using Docker, assign it some CPUs, give it some RAM, put some constraints on it, and I was able to migrate his world over, and bam, like now he and his friends have their own private server on my network. So if you want to see kind of stuff like that, let me know down below. The Minecraft I know is pretty specific, but if you're interested in things like Docker and Docker versus VMs and stuff like that, that's where I'm going to do some more videos in this series. So if you have any questions about any of this stuff, let me know down below. If you have any thoughts about content you want to see on things that you can do with your NAS, like I already mentioned with the Minecraft, the Docker kind of stuff, let me know and I'll see if I can make that happen. I'm definitely looking forward to being able to push this thing a lot harder, just knowing how much more it can do than just be a storage box. And if you want to know how I set up my NAS specifically to get those higher 2.5 gig, 10 gig speeds for my editing workflow and all that kind of stuff to have a direct link to your PC, I did a whole video about that. You can check it out here or in the description. I'll put it somewhere. All right, that's it. It's chai time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.